Those who look at the world through eyes of faith see the world so differently from those who look at it through eyes of unbelief. Believers look at the world and the firmament and see a universe which declares the existence and the glory of God in every language spoken on earth, Psalm 19, verses 1 through 3. Unbelievers look at this evidence and never even think about God. The eyes of those who walk by faith, 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 7, and those who walk by the flesh definitely see two different worlds. Look at the first century churches using eyes of faith. Most churches were despised and persecuted so much that they often had to meet in secret. James described these churches so graphically when he asked, "Has God not chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom, which he promised to those who love him?" James 2 and verse 5. However, there was one church in the first century which was so blessed financially that they did not suffer in this way. Most churches in the first century were the focus of hate from the enemies that were around them. There was persecution from the pagans. There was even more persecution which came from the synagogues, which saw the church as being a great threat to Judaism. However, there was one church who, judging by what is described in the epistle written to them, was not the object of such hate and its attendant opposition. The suffering of Jewish Christians was especially intense. The book of Hebrews described the reaction of the church to this suffering. In Hebrews 10 and verse 34, the Hebrew writer says, "For you had compassion on me in my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and an enduring possession for yourselves in heaven." However, there was one church who did not lose its possession and remained prosperous. Had you lived in the first century, which of these churches would you like to be the place where you worshiped and served God? A church which endured persecution and were poverty-stricken, or one that did not have to meet in secret? A church where there was persecution and poverty, or one that was quite wealthy and did not have any wants? Now, before you answer this question, let me tell you that the church which did not meet secretly, was not persecuted, and retained its possession was the church at Laodicea, the same one which Jesus was about to vomit out of his body. The church in Laodicea saw themselves as rich, wealthy, and had need of nothing. Revelation 3 and verse 18. Now think about this. They had reached the point where they viewed themselves as being so much better than everyone else, the point where they felt like they had no needs to speak of, where they viewed themselves as rich in the views of the members as well as in light of the community in which they were. But how did Jesus see that church? He saw himself as standing outside. He felt that he had been removed from that body because they were no longer focusing upon serving him. Their focus had become self-serving, trying to benefit themselves rather than to serve God. And Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." He was outside. He was knocking on that door of the church at Laodicea. He was knocking and waiting for them to open that door and let him back in. But their desires and their mentality had changed so much that they did not realize that they had removed the very one who had purchased that church with his blood, the very one that had brought about the washing away of the sins of those members. And as such, Jesus pretty much says that this church was making him sick by the way that they were conducting themselves. Now, in the eyes of the world, we could say that this was a perfect church. They weren't struggling. They weren't suffering in any way. But to Jesus, this was not a perfect church. They had problems that they needed to correct. They needed to restore Jesus back to his proper position in their worship and in their devotion. Please consider these things in light of the church that you are a part of today. What is the foremost focus? Is it serving God? Is it loving Christ and keeping His commandments? Or is it some type of social or political agenda that is there? Remember, the perfect church is the one that is perfect in their love and their devotion for serving God.
Thank you for joining us for our program today. We pray that God blesses you with a wonderful day, and we hope that you can join us this evening at 6 o'clock at Pyburn Street Church of Christ for our Summer on the Mountain series with this week's speaker, Brother Evan Smith of the Commissary Church of Christ in Paragould, Arkansas.